Hey, gorgeous. Welcome to the Bernadette Jackson Podcast, where we are redefining how the world views women with daddy issues by discussing topics, sharing stories, and gaining insights, all from the perspective of a fatherless daughter. I'm your host, Bernadette, the creator of Her Way Relationship Intensive and your favorite fear investigator. If this is your first time here, here's what I want you to know. The fear of abandonment and rejection is the lens through which fatherless daughters do most things. It informs how they show up in every relationship. Most fatherless daughters are operating in the fear of abandonment cycle and they don't even know it. Each week, I focus on a topic that highlights how fear shows up in our lives, either through conversations with others or deep dives into the insights that I have. If you'd like to know if you're on the fear of abandonment cycle, go to BernadetteJackson.com/FOA cycle and take my free assessment. Again, that's BernadetteJackson.com/FOA cycle. Okay, welcome to the podcast. We have Andre Harrison with us today. He is born in Brooklyn, New York, whoop whoop, and he is born to a Trinidadian father and a Bayesian mother. He is the father of 3 beautiful, intelligent kids. He is an actor by trade, and he is a strong proponent of Black men getting mental health checkups and protecting Black women. Andre, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm honored that you even asked me to do this. So thank you again.
No problem. I'm glad that you made it. Are you excited about the weather warming up?
I guess.
You know what? I asked.
You know what?
Mm-hmm.
When there's a beach involved, I'm extremely excited. When it's hot New York pavement weather, not so much.
I hear you. I feel like I'm getting a little excited because it's a little bit warmer out, but I feel you with the hot New York pavement weather. I think I would rather be on a beach, or rather maybe even by the mountains someplace where it's a little cooler and I can get the vibes. Yeah.
I mean, I'm good for like 78 degrees.
Yeah.
See, that's optimum for me.
Yeah. I feel you right there. Anything you're doing this summer? Are you doing any traveling that now that outside is open? What you got going on?
I have no idea. My one and only plan is to go to Michigan because my two oldest kids live in Michigan. And since the pandemic, I haven't been out there. Other than that, I don't have anything set. So I'm very much of whatever comes up, I'm open to at this point.
Okay. I hear you. So the plans drop in your lap and it sound good, then it's like, let go.
Yeah. As long as the money is in my pocket to go. Unless the Lord wants to give me some winning lotto numbers. But outside of that. But yeah.
All right.
I'm pretty flexible.
That sounds good. So this is a new series that I'm doing. In season 3, I wanted to start to share the stories of fathers with daughters. So I'm so glad that you came on with us. So tell me, how many daughters do you have?
I have 2 daughters. They're the first and the last at this point. My oldest is 15, and my youngest is 6. And man, they are like, they're amazing. All 3 of them, my son as well, but they're just amazing kids. When I tell you, like, you don't have to talk to them twice. Like, they do exceptionally well in school. All of them are on the honor roll. My 6-year-old's on the principal's list. Like, they just, there's no challenge. Like,
yeah.
And I don't want to say there's no challenge, because there's always a challenge in some degree, but there's none of those incidental, like, talking crazy to you or not doing what you asked them to do, right, or being disrespectful. Like, they're just really good children, and I'm I'm blessed and grateful for just having them in my life, really, to be quite honest. Because, sometimes people say things like, I don't deserve this. Mm-hmm. Like, I very often feel like, well, I do not deserve these children. They are amazing. And I know a lot of people say that about their kids, but I think they're truly amazing.
I definitely know what you mean. I can completely resonate with you there. So you don't even have to explain it anymore. And I really feel like my audience feels that way about their kids too. So you have been a girl dad now for 15 years. What has that taught you about yourself and about girls in general?
Well, it's challenging for me. I'm going to start there. It's taught me a lot, and I'm still learning. I'm learning at this very moment. I want to make the story as short as possible. So I was actually engaged to my oldest daughter's mother. So my oldest daughter's mother has my first two children, Avery and Alexander. So she's 15, he's 13. Unfortunately, that didn't work out, and she moved back to Michigan. Mm. So I've essentially been a distant dad for 14 years, with the exception of trips to Michigan. A couple of times they've been to New York, or I lived in DC, they were down there. But so it's always been more phone conversations than actual being present, which has been an extreme struggle for me. It's a struggle for me at this very moment. And I would say one of the things I learned is something that I'm experiencing with my daughter right now, regardless of if I feel it's something I did or didn't do. If she feels that's what I did do, or I'm giving her a certain feeling, that I have to respect that feeling, regardless if I'm the parent or not, regardless of if I actually did it or not. It's her perception of it. So I have to acknowledge her perception and allow her to work through that space, along with trying to find a solution to helping her work through that space. Unfortunately, at this point, and we were all 15 at some point, we started smelling ourselves and feeling like we knew a little bit more than our parents, or we're tall now, or whatever. Yep. So, it's been a challenge for me because, I desire relationship and communication with my children, and it doesn't always go the way that I want it to go. But again, I can't allow how I'm feeling, whether it be hurt or sad or happy or whatever it is, to override or overshadow how they're feeling. So that's one of the main things that I have learned and I'm learning. And it's up and down. Our emotions are up and down. They're never linear. It's one day happy, hey dad. One day it's like, don't talk to me. Mm-hmm. So yeah, there's that.
Yeah, I definitely get what you're saying there. I really feel like teenagers are from another planet, honestly. And the emotions and, everything that they're going through, like it's almost as if we forget that we were once there. And so like now when we're receiving it on the back end, we're like, wow, is this really what it was when I was that age? Like, is this really it? Like, this is a lot right now.
Makes you want to go hug your mommy and be like, I'm so
sorry. Seriously. Like every day. So, I mean, I definitely get it. But something you said stood out to me, and you said, that you're still trying to work through some difficulty with that. So is it because of the fluctuations in your daughter's emotions, or is it other things? I mean, I know you definitely mentioned respecting how they think or how they feel, even if you don't think that you may have done anything. And, to me, that's just speaking to perception.
Right.
At this age, perception is everything. So do you think the difficulty is in wanting for your perception to be considered, or is it other things?
It's other things. It is. So in my bio, we talk about mental health, right?
Right.
In my 20s, in most of my 20s, I suffered from extreme depression. And it was just, I never really saw myself.
Mm-hmm.
And it caused me to make a lot of bad decisions in my life. And going to therapy, the root of most of that was my father leaving when I was very young. So I had my own daddy issues that I didn't even realize that I had. And it was causing me to do things that they just weren't productive. I mean, that's the most simple way to put it. So now I'm in a space where everything that I said I didn't want to be in terms of fatherhood, which would be a weakened dad, like my dad was, is what I am. So one of the challenges is, because I understand depression, having lived it for so long, and know that there's certain things that trigger it. One of the challenges is not allowing myself to fall into that negative space, because I can't be the father to my kids that I want to be. And for instance, some of the bad choices were not taking school seriously. So I never finished college. Not really dedicating myself to things because I had extremely low self-esteem, which when people meet me now, they're just like, you were shy, you had low self-esteem? No way. And I'm like, you wouldn't even understand how bad it was. Yeah. So in that low self-esteem, I never really pushed myself to things, or I felt I wasn't worthy of it or able to. And it wasn't because I wasn't smart, because I was an extremely smart child. But I had a lack of sense of value. And it's crazy the way my therapist said it. So my therapist, you know who he is, because at one point he was at Kingsborough. His name is Alphonse Sinclair.
Mm-hmm.
And I used to drive an hour and a half in Connecticut just to see him, because it was so important for me not to just continually make these same mistakes anymore. And one thing that he pointed out to me was, we do things for our kids because there's a part of us that wants their validation.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, one of the things that was an issue for me is that I did a lot of things for women because I wanted to be validated. But when I was validated, or I was quote unquote chosen, I would push them away, or I would sabotage a relationship, which is what he during conversation came out, and he said, do you know why you did that? And I said, no, I don't. He said, because although they chose you and you desired to be chosen, you never actually really saw your own value. So the minute that they chose you, you ran, because you was like, nah, I don't deserve to be chosen.
Yeah.
But the other side of you is like, but I want to be chosen.
Exactly.
And it's crazy. Mm-hmm. So it's like, even now with my 15-year-old, to be quite frank, right now, my 15-year-old and I haven't talked for a few months. There's some things that she's dealing with, and she feels like the space that we're in is not good for us to converse. That's extremely difficult for me, because I do seek validation from my children.
Right.
And then the man part of me wants to fix it. So, no, let's talk. I want to fix it. How can we fix it? And she's like, I don't want to talk. So I'm trying to balance this, respect her feelings,
right,
respect where she is. Don't come from a place of, well, I'm your daddy, so you gotta talk to me.
Mm-hmm.
But then also not allow myself to go into a negative space, which there's some days I have to fight through, because I'm like, yo, I just want to talk to my children. I just want to see my children. I just want to be present. And then it just kind of turns into so many other things like, God, why aren't you helping me in this space that I'm asking you to help me in? And why am I still here? And I've been praying about this for 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years. And I'm not asking for anything crazy, just be present with my children. And then you start kind of this back and forth. Like, we're your children, you want to be with us, you know how that feels. So why don't you want to help me here? So it's been extremely hard. Because my son is very surface. What's up, Dad? How you doing? Oh, I like this right now. Oh, I'm about to play these video games. My daughters, and it's in two different ways, my 6-year-old and my 15-year-old, they're expressing in some shape or form the effect of me not being there that is having on them.
Right.
Just last night I was in the Bronx. So my 6-year-old lives in the Bronx with my ex-wife. And so whenever I'm there, I make sure I put her to sleep before I leave to come back to Brooklyn. Almost religiously, every time I put her to sleep, she's like, I wish you could stay here. Last night, she's like, you remember you slept on the floor with me next to my bed? And I'm like, yeah. She's like, I want to do that again. Like, she just desires me to be there.
Yeah.
And it's almost like the scab is pulled off a wound every time she says that. I handle it a little bit better now, but I can tell you probably the first 10 times she said that to me, I would just get in the car and like bawl my eyes out because I felt like I failed my kids, which was like the one thing in life I was like, I will never be that father. No way. I will never break my children's heart. And I feel like I have. And my friends are like, oh, your kids love you. You're a good dad, whatever. But, very often I don't feel that way because my idea of fatherhood had always been me being in the house with my wife and my children.
Mm-hmm.
But because of my own lack of self-healing and not understanding or acknowledging the trauma that I was walking around with, my childhood trauma as an adult, it essentially ruined everything that came in front of me because what ended up happening, I was walking in a space of ego, pride, and immaturity.
Yeah. So, yeah, you really said a lot there, and so much came up for me in terms of remembering what it was like with my own father not being there, like at 10, at 12, at 14, at 15, like all the things. And so I'm wondering, with your 15-year-old daughter not wanting to really talk, is it possible that maybe you can write her letters or send her emails or share your heart in that way? Like, I don't know if you've tried that. Maybe you have, but
I have, and
okay.
I've done it. And sometimes you do things and you hope for something, a response, a breakthrough.
Mm-hmm.
It just didn't happen. So it was like crushed all over again. But again, ultimately I want my child to be happy, right?
Yeah.
And as hard as this is for me right now, it's also hard for her.
Yeah.
So although I struggled initially, because this is June, this started in January. Although I struggled initially with not wanting to reach out, and every couple of weeks I'll still shoot her a text or whatever, no response. But for me, I was just like, I just needed her to know that I'm thinking about her and I care. But I was told that that's not respecting her wishes of wanting space.
Okay.
So now I've had to totally shut down communication from her, which is extremely hard for me.
Mm-hmm.
Because I used to live in a world of shutting down from people. Mm. And when I shut down, I don't shut down from a person. I shut down from people.
Right.
And which is one of the things that it's horrible if you suffer from depression. The last thing you need to do is seclude yourself. So, I'm trying to even balance that and like still stay positive in the other areas of my life, although that space is difficult for me. But understand that she has to work through this. Again, I don't know how she's working through it, and there's that part of me that like wants to help her because
right.
But I at this point, the only power that I really have is prayer. So that's all I got.
Yeah. That is tough. I don't even know honestly like what to say there. The only thing I'm thinking about honestly is some kind of like either emailing, not so much emailing her, but just putting your thoughts down, right? And saving them for whenever she does want to engage. You know what I mean? Like if she can just see like when she's ready that, all this time, like you've been consistently, even if it was like dropping a voice note to her, like, hey, I know, we're still kind of working things out, but this is what I was thinking about you today. And then just leaving it. And then, like just whenever she is in the space where she wants to share and she wants to converse, then you can send these things to her. Like, this is, some of the thoughts that I was having when we were not talking or whatever it is. So that's just something that came to me. I'm always looking for solutions. So sometimes, this is what this ends up being. You can take it or not, but, that's just what came to me. So with everything that you said, just in terms of, now healing from your own childhood trauma and then allowing your ego and all of these things to drive you when you were younger, how has being a girl dad changed how you view or treat women now?
Oh, Lord Jesus. I would say one of the main things for me is being a protector. Over my life, some more information about me. I'm a veteran of the United States Marine Corps. I've learned some things in the United States Marine Corps. And so I'm very, let's just say, good with my hands.
Mm-hmm.
And on multiple occasions in the street in DC, in New York, I have confronted men that I saw put their hands on women. And I don't necessarily recommend that to everyone. I mean, people are crazy, and I get that. But for me, it's across all lines, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's protecting in a physical sense. It's protecting in an emotional sense. Case in point. And this is, again, when I was in my 20s and just kind of just living however I wanted to live and with whomever I wanted to live with at that point in my life, I didn't have a high emotional intelligence. That is probably the easiest way to describe it. So in my mind, if I told you the truth about our situation and our situation became physical and you developed feelings and then said, hey, so what are we? And I looked at you crazy, like, what do you mean, what are we? I told you how I felt. To me, in that space, I was like, well, I told you the truth, so why are you acting like this? But in being a protector, you have to look ahead, right? You have to understand some of the things you're going to do may have an effect down the road.
Right.
And in order to help shield that person, you have to make the correct choice now. So if I'm going to open myself up to you in a physical sense, in intimacy, and act crazy when you develop feelings, that's speaking more of my lack of awareness of who you are as a person and how you feel than you not hearing what I said, but feeling what I gave.
Right.
Right. So, and I think about that. I'll never forget this. And you know what's funny? Both of my daughters did this. And my oldest daughter did this even up until she was about 10. If we would go places, they would stand behind me. I'll never forget my daughter doing it. And when you have little cute children, everybody wants to be like, hi.
Yeah.
And my daughters, they would always go behind me and be like, Daddy, and like protect me from this person. I don't know them.
Right.
And it translate into, when I say protect Black women in general, because as Black men, let's keep it 100. Black women are most disenfranchised and abused woman in this world, not even America, in this world.
Right.
And if we as Black men aren't going to stand in the gap to protect them from the onslaught of white supremacy, of racism, of misogynistic behavior, of the way the patriarchy is set up, so on and so forth, I get $1, you get 90 cents, we are not helping us.
Mm-hmm.
We are not because let me tell you something. If you ain't helping Black women, you ain't helping us.
That's it.
Because the root of who we are, the root of our movements, the root of our support, the root of us being a unified front, unfortunately, is Black women. Because the problem is why I promote and support and advise Black men to go to therapy. The problem is there's so many broken Black men walking around who either never had a father, who were shown that the way we behave in the locker room, talking about women and how many women you have sex with is the way of being a man, who were told emotions is for suckers and you don't cry and all these other stuff. So we got these broken vessels walking around just damaging everything they come into contact with. Mm-hmm. And that is just not helping our community on a whole. Most importantly for me, it's the protection of women, and it's just because she like you don't mean you got to sleep with her. Like, like there's people God put in your lives, for certain reasons, and what's been happening to me lately is women that I have been meeting over the past 5-10 years. There's been a brokenness that the Holy Spirit's been showing me very clearly that I've been able to address to push them towards therapy and their own healing. Mm-hmm. And that was my job. Nothing else. Oh, and you're cute and I'm cute, so what's up? No.
Yeah.
and again, that's what I was doing in that old life. It was like, oh, well, she's pretty. And okay, well, we'll just see what happens. Nah, that's not your job, and that's not protecting. It isn't.
Yeah, I definitely get you there, and I just want to thank you honestly, because I've been running into men lately who have the same thoughts as you in terms of just wanting to be healed and wanting to be protectors, wanting to be providers, and wanting other people also to be healed. And I did not always see that. And so now that I'm seeing it so much in the people that I come in contact with, whether it's, through work or, just in general, it is so refreshing, because I feel like it is a direct contradiction to what we typically see represented as Black men in our community. Like we're always seeing Black men being abusers or being proponents of violence or whatever it is, like just like not being the heads of their homes and different things. And that is truly not the case. And so whenever I'm able to, speak to men who are completely different than the way Black men are usually looked at, just societally, I feel like I am witnessing like what it is that is actually happening, like reality of things, and not like, what the media tries to push, or not what, like, maybe a select group of people have seen in a very small percentage or population, you know what I mean? So I just honestly, like, conversations like this really do help me to be hopeful about, the world that my daughter's going to grow up into. She's already growing, but, just what she's going to see, what she's going to experience, and just the people in my orbit. So I love that you are out here just pushing people towards therapy and getting their healing, and, being introspective about what's going on with you, because even with that, that is absolutely going to make you a better parent. Like, whether you can see it now or not, just this level of introspection that you have about who you are, what you don't want to do, and, like respecting, your daughter, even though sometimes it can be hard, is eventually going to pay off. So I just wanted to tell you that before we moved on with just this conversation. So with everything that you said, do you feel like your relationship with your daughters and just everything that you've learned in these 15 years of being a girl dad, do you think that it has improved your relationships with the women in your life as well?
It has. It has. I feel that I am a little bit more even keeled, even when the challenges come up. I was pretty much a hothead for a long time, where it was like I'll go from 0 to 100 in a second. Mm-hmm. And for me, one of the things I do most now is because sometimes children have questions that are difficult or require difficult answers.
Right.
And translating that even into adult relationships, with children, there's kind of two ways you would usually go about it. You'd be like, I don't know. You'd blow it off, or you'd answer them. And I think one of the things that I'm able to do easier now is have difficult conversations. Mm. And in having those difficult conversations, whatever it may be, stepping outside of myself. One of the main issues with, in my opinion, in relationships, whatever relationship it is, whether it be a romantic, whether it be friendship, whether it be between your children, is that we are very often prone to going on the defensive when challenging things come up in those conversations. One of the things that I try to do, I am one of those, don't argue with me right away. Like, you got to give me a moment, because I need to process. And I'm not going to process for a week and not talk to you, because that's right. Inconsiderate. But let me give the moment, because one of the things that I do in that moment is I say, all right, Andre, she said she felt this way. Now, move outside of yourself and try to walk in her shoes. Now, you know what you said, but try to see if what you said could have actually been taken that way, right? And very often when you do that, because, sometimes you don't know the faces you make when you say things. You don't necessarily hear your own tone. I'm like, okay, I see how it may have come off that way to her, even though that's not what I meant.
Right.
And then in that moment, when we now have the conversation and feel like, well, you said this and I felt that way, I can at least acknowledge that I understand how you felt. It wasn't my intent. That's not what I meant to say to you. Mm-hmm. And I apologize for that, because there's nothing wrong with apologizing. You don't lose any blood.
Right.
And then we can move forward in, rectifying whatever the situation is. Because I don't. I have no energy to stay in any spaces with people where there's turmoil. I'm like, look,
Right.
life is. If COVID has shown us anything, is life is way too short. Tomorrow is definitely not promised. And if you got energy to sit around and be mad and fuss, go that way. Because one of
Right.
the main things I'm doing is I'm protecting my energy. And whatever doesn't feel right around me, gotta go.
Yeah, I definitely get that. So I love that you said that you pause whenever you're having difficult conversations to kind of check yourself. So, do you search yourself for your views or your beliefs or your habits when you are thinking about conversations with your daughter? Like, are you intentional with them in that same way?
I try to be, because a lot of what we do is based on what we know or how we experienced it.
Right.
So, at this point, they're experiencing things differently, and I make it a point that I have to speak truth to power in that space for them. You're Caribbean, so you will understand this.
Mm-hmm.
For us coming to this country, it was, this is what you're gonna do. You're gonna go to school. You're gonna become a nurse, a doctor, or a lawyer.
That's it.
So when I go home, I can say, my big time son is a doctor.
Mm-hmm.
Because that makes them proud, because that was
Right.
their goal. That's why they came here, right? But some of these kids don't want to do that.
Yeah.
And I just can't be like, nah, this is what you're gonna do. If my daughter's like, so my 15-year-old is a dope musician. She's been in piano lessons forever. She can play music by ear. She produces music. She writes music. She sings. She can draw her behind. She's just dope.
Wow.
Now, if she decided this is what she wants to do, for us, from our culture, be like, you want to be a musician? That's not a life. I can't live in that space.
Yeah.
I can't live in that space. We have to be able to adapt to where they are in the present and understand that just because we did it a certain way and it worked doesn't mean that that's the way for them as well. So I believe in that. Really shutting down my voice and allowing them to have a voice is what promotes healthy growth in our relationships.
Yeah, I feel like that's so foreign from the way that we grew up, but I think that it is exactly how we're going to raise kids who understand that they have value and that their views matter and that they have autonomy over, like their bodies and, their life and stuff like that, even at a young age. So, yeah, I completely get you there. And I feel like even now, like as I'm raising my own daughter, and sometimes I speak to my friends who are also West Indian and they grew up in the West Indian culture and are immersed in it, they're like, ooh, like your relationship with Jalen is like, ooh, it's a little, it's a little much. And I'm like, what you mean? Like, because we have conversations and I allow her to have a voice. That's what you're talking about? Like,
it's too friendly to them.
Yeah, exactly. Like, she's very opinionated. Yeah, that's how I wanted her to be. You know what I mean? And it's
Right.
like, it's hard because sometimes you want to turn down the volume on those opinions, but you realize like when you raise them to be opinionated and you want them to have their voice and you want them to be like bold enough and courageous enough to actually tell you like what they're thinking and stuff like that, it comes with the territory of sometime, like, just like you said, you just have to kind of lower your volume to hear what they're saying and understand that they are definitely people who have a voice, who have opinions, who have thoughts outside of what our expectations might be, and they deserve to be honored. So it's like that fine line, like it's definitely one that I'm walking every single day, but I can completely get you right there. Before we continue, I just want to pause very briefly for a commercial break, and we will be back shortly. Before we get back into this week's goodness, I want to invite you to join my private Facebook community, H.E.R Coalition. I make it my business to create safe spaces for fatherless daughters to learn, grow, and heal, and H.E.R Coalition does just that. We go deeper into conversations about the things that we discuss here on the podcast. I teach a new topic weekly, we share stories, and we just support and love each other. It's a space I wish I had growing up when I was clueless about how my fatherlessness affected me and yearning for a deeper connection, but I was just too paralyzed with the fear of rejection. Healing happens in community with like-minded and like-hearted people, and I would love to be in community with you. So join H.E.R Coalition at BernadetteJackson.com/community. The ladies of H.E.R Coalition get to choose the topic of weekly discussions, they get exclusive access to events, and first dibs on all that my brand has to offer. So again, join me in H.E.R Coalition at BernadetteJackson.com/community. All right, and we are back. We are back with Andre, and we are having a conversation about raising girls. He is a girl dad, and so far, this conversation has been so insightful. So I just want to jump right back in here. What would you say, other than what you've already shared, is your approach to raising your daughters?
I can't even. It's a learning process every day for me.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's not even like, okay, well, I remember, like, I got spankings as a child.
Mm-hmm.
Not a lot, because I wasn't a bad child, but like every once in a while when I really did something, I got a spanking. I remember once I knocked my father's motorcycle over and he spanked me, but it was more, he spanked me because he told me numerous times don't do it, because if that motorcycle had fell on me,
right,
it could have crushed me, right? But in my mind, I was like, oh, once I have children, if they act up, they're getting spankings.
Mm-hmm.
Hasn't happened. I literally, out of the three of them, the 6-year-old got popped once by me, like on her hand, but she was really young. She was like maybe 1, and it was really, she was walking towards a heater, and she's inquisitive, and I told her, no, stop. And she kept doing it, and I took my 2 fingers and I hit her on the hand.
Right.
And she it's funny because I remember she looked at me, and I was married at the time, and my wife was like, why did you hit her? She's like, but then you could tell she understood and then didn't go back. That is the only time I've ever touched any of my 3 children.
Mm-hmm.
And not to say they've been in spaces where they needed it, but I feel there's just better ways.
Right.
I just feel there's better ways. And that's another thing, it's unlearning everything. Excuse me. Not saying, no, unlearning is not a good word. It's questioning everything that happened to me to understand if it was fruitful, if it was something worth keeping or getting rid of in terms of my children.
Yeah.
One of the other things with all 3 of them, but with my girls is like there's no limit. Like, we always say you can be whatever you want to be or whatever, but then we kind of stop in that space. You have to follow that up with pushing them in whatever they're feeling in the moment or wanting to do. One of the things I'm trying to do now is, so during this pandemic, I started a production company. Now, I work as an actor, but I've also directed film. And I was like, you know what? I want to do something that I can leave for my children, right? Now, all 3 of them in some shape or form are doing something on the production side. My oldest does art. She does music. She had a podcast at one point.
Nice.
My son, he's, into the video game stuff. So he has like a channel, a YouTube channel. The 2 oldest, they both have YouTube channels. And then my 6-year-old, she's actually been on TV with me, or she's done photo shoots with me when I got booked for gigs, and they were like looking for a 3-year-old, and I happen to have a 3-year-old. So, and she's always like, I want a YouTube channel, Daddy, whatever. And because, she watches a lot of these kids on YouTube.
Right.
And I figured, how can I help promote that space and also create some income for my children down the line, right? So, we have to, whatever that thing is that our kids are interested in that point, whatever point is in their life, we have to put things in place to help promote and push them forward in that space, because we don't know what will come of it if we just say, you could be whatever you want, and then they're struggling in the background as a 7-year-old because they don't have the tools necessary to be whatever you want.
Right.
You can't get into Brooklyn Tech or Stuyvesant or Brown Science by just being smart.
Yeah.
You need to take those specialized classes. You have to put them in the position to do that. And that's kind of one of the reasons why I am extremely grateful and blessed for the mothers of my children, because if there's anything we agree on, we agree on a lot of things, not like we have issues, but if there's anything that we agree on that is tantamount to the success of our children, it's their education and allowing to work in their creative spaces and giving them the tools that they need to do that. Whether it is you need quality microphones, or you need a good computer, whatever it is. And at 12 years old, both of them, my son just took his the second time, but they took their PSATs, and they did pretty well for a 12-year-old, for something that most people take in 12th grade. But they've always, tested high on everything they've done. And their mom, she pushes them. And I'm like, thank you, Brandy. Because one of the things I don't want to happen to my children is I was smart just like that. And I want to say was, because I am smart. But there was nobody really pushing me. They were just like, oh, Andre's smart, whatever. And what happened to me is I became a procrastinator, because I was like, oh, I'm smart. So,
yeah.
And my friend said something to me last week, and it stuck with me. And I've been saying it to my 6-year-old. So again, she made the principal's list. She did amazing this year in school. She was only in the 1st grade, but she's supposed to be in kindergarten. And I would always say to her, you're smart. You're such a smart kid. And I can't remember the book. I have to look it up. But in the book, it says, instead of just telling your kids they're smart, tell them the work that you put in, the studying that you did to get those grades is as important as you just being smart.
Right.
So now when I speak to her, I'm like, you did really well in reading, but that's because of all the studying you did. And I don't just say you're smart, because I see how that can lead to a space of just complacency, which is what I don't want for them.
Yeah. Yeah, that is really good. That is really good. So what do you want your daughters to learn about men as a result of their relationship with you?
Oh, a lot of grace. Oh, man. If anything in my life that I need them to know and want them to know, and becomes a requirement for them when they get to the space of dating, is that he has a relationship with God. I have done a lot in my life. I've been many places. I've seen many faces. I've done many things. And I never felt the freedom that I feel now because of my relationship with God, which is so opposite to how I was taught about God as a child.
Mm-hmm.
Because I was taught, thou shalt not, thou shalt not, thou shalt not.
Yeah.
and I never really understood the basis of love and everything that God was directing us to do. So, you know, that part of you that feels like, oh, God's trying to take away my fun. I can't do this. I can't do that. I can't do this. But again, the freedom that I feel in that space and the ability, the thing is, it's multi-level. So on top of the freedom, you're able to live your truth. You're able to live and be vulnerable and not be living in a space of fear because you understand who you belong to.
Right.
And you understand what your worth is to him. When you stop seeking validation from other people, you're not trying to impress the crowd anymore. And let's keep it 100. Every single one of us, to some level or degree, seek validation.
Of course.
The minute you post on social media, you're looking for a like. Nobody posts not to get likes. You want somebody to agree with you in some way, shape, or form, whatever it is.
You're right.
And I want them to know and hopefully see through me that I'm not doing this for likes. Yeah. I'm not loving you because I need somebody else's approval. I'm really here now. Don't get me wrong. I want them to know that I love them, but I'm doing this because this is my God-given duty in making sure that they feel protected, provided for, and safe. Mm-hmm. And if they're in a space with someone where they don't feel any of those three things, they need to leave.
Yeah.
And you know what? Here's one thing where I'm super supportive of where my 15-year-old is. She feels uncomfortable in a situation with me, and she stepped away. Yeah. And I hope she keeps this. I hope at 22, if she feels uncomfortable in a situation for some dude, she'd be like, I'm out. I'm not staying here. You're making me uncomfortable or whatever it is. Like they don't, they have to understand that they have control and power over everything that they do and nobody could tell them different. Mm-hmm. And I realized I had to get to this space as well because I was very much a hurt my daughter and I'll kill you type of person.
Yeah.
Not to say that that's 100% going away, but I understand that I'm not always going to be there. And one of the things God had said to me, and he said it very clearly, he said, they were mine before they were yours. She was like, so I even understand in some spaces where you feel like you're not doing for them what you want to do for them, but I got them in my hands, so you know that they're good. Right. And to a degree that puts me a little at ease, to a degree, not much, but I just understand in this space of relationship, heavenly relationship, how it transfers into my earthly relationships. And I want my daughters to be able to see that in men that they have relationship with in friendship, romantic, whatever, in their careers and their work environments, whatever it is.
Yeah, that's good. I really love that. So what advice would you give a girl who is growing up without her father? What would you say to her?
Oh my gosh. This is why I think community is so important.
Yeah.
And that's what's hard, because I know that if Black men were to be healed, the dynamic of our community would change drastically. Mm-hmm. So, because it's not to say there's not going to be some fatherless homes, because adult relationships mess up. It happens.
Yeah.
But to disprove what white media, because it's white media that pushes this narrative that the Black father is not in a home, although the CDC states that the Black father is the most involved in their children's lives, even though they might not live in the same residence, but they are a part of their children's lives. But again, that that image of black dad not being there or black dad being this or black. It's not true. Mm-hmm. But I think that we as a community, we have to stand in the gap as brothers, as uncles, as friends. We have to stand in that space to show her, even though her father is gone, this is what it looks like. And also, we have to show her her worth. It doesn't have to be your child for you to treat them like it's your child.
Yeah.
And we're not, I'm not asking anybody to be crazy about it. I understand we all have our responsibilities and we have our own lives. But I truly believe that it's better to give this than to receive, because there's such a blessing in that, to see where you have invested your time in the success of someone younger than you or child, and them able to transition into adulthood and live a productive life.
Yeah.
Because we don't want to send another child into society that is having a hard time finding their way around because we decided, well, it's not my child, so it's not my concern.
Right.
So that wasn't the actual answer, but just thinking about community. But what I would say to her, that is you know what? This is something I say a lot to people now, and it's weird for me. Someone, again, very shy growing up, not really expressing himself, kind of like in the corner. Like if he was at the party and there was a dude in the wall in the corner, that dude was me. Like, I was always just like not talking to nobody.
Right.
But I tell people a lot in this space that I love them. And like mean it. Not, oh, I love you. Like here's another benefit of relationship with God is like he causes you to love in a way you've never loved before. Even people who've hurt you, and that part I struggled with, because I was like, you slap me in my face, I ain't turning the other cheek. We having a problem.
That's it.
But when I tell you that, again, that freedom of being able to love confidently without fear.
Yeah.
To show a child who doesn't have a father that, like, you're still loved and I love you. And sometimes it's just a word. It's just a kind word. Like, you got $5 in your pocket, take $5 out and give it to her. Like whatever it is, but like just something that just kind of shows them that they are valuable. Because the struggle is when your dad leaves, you start to question your value. You don't understand that those two adults just couldn't get it together. All you know is he left. Why did he leave me?
Exactly.
And they really just need to know that they're loved and they're valued and they're special, and there's only one of them, and they don't have to be like everybody else, and what everybody else says is cool ain't always cool. Like, like we got just like really, I think being real with children is the best thing you could do for them.
Yeah, I agree.
You have a teenager, so you having to deal with music, and like when the WAP song came out, so it's like if your daughter doesn't know and she's 12 and she hears her kids are talking about it and she's like, hey, mommy, what's WAP? Like, you don't want to really have that conversation with your kids at 12. But I'm sorry, at this day and age, especially because of social media, you have to have that conversation.
And there's also Google, like they can Google it.
Right. You can't be like, it means worship and praise. Like,
exactly.
You have to, you got these kids walking around like, we're going to walk for Jesus. And people going to be like, wait, what's going on? Like, we have to be honest. We have to be honest. And really, that's it. It's really just love. And it's loving in action. Not just...
So that was the interview with Andre. He was such a great sport for coming on. He was the first one to do this particular series with me, so I really appreciate him. He had so many gems, and there is a part 2 to this conversation, but I'm going to be playing it on my IG. So stay tuned for the last part of this interview with him. And thank you so much for staying with us to the end. Don't forget that you deserve amazing relationships, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.